Everyone, I did my presentation on the Seneca Falls Convention. Without the Seneca Falls Convention, women would not have any of the opportunities that we have today, which includes the right to vote. It opened doors for other minorities as well, such as the African American community. What is the Seneca Falls Convention? The Seneca Falls Convention was the first women's rights convention in the U.S. It took place at the Wesleyan Chapel in Seneca Falls, New York on July 19th and 20th in 1848. A fun fact about this event is on the first day, only women could attend. Over at least 300 people were in attendance. All resolutions passed unanimously except for the 9th resolution, which demanded the right for women to vote. 19th century gender roles. So to understand why women of this time felt so oppressed and needed things such as this convention to fight for their equality, you would need to understand how their lives were at this time. At this time, women of the house were the wife and the mother, and they were the keeper of the household. They were meant to keep the house peaceful, very quiet, and especially very clean. They were the spiritual leaders of their children. They were meant to keep them in line and pure and in good shape morally. Job opportunities at this time were opening, but they still were not equal with men. The jobs were in factories, offices, and retail. Despite this, 95% of women remained at home. They were looked down upon if they could not bear children. Childbirth was basically a requirement of the time, which is very interesting. Another requirement would be fashion requirements. They had specific ways that they were supposed to dress. One of these ways would be the corset, which is very controversial, and although it was a fashion standard of the time, they were definitely not good for women's health. The heroes of women's rights. 5 women organized the convention: Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Lucretia Mott, Mary McClinton, Martha Wright, and Jane Hunt. The one that is given the most credit for this event, which I'm sure you've all heard of, is Elizabeth Cady Stanton. The Tea Party. So the Tea Party is the event that started this whole movement. The guests were the people who were the same women who organized the Seneca Falls Convention. It took place on June 9th, 1848. Together they all conversated about the many injustices toward women. They were tired of being restrained to the limitations of being a woman in that era. By the end of the night, they were writing an advertisement for the Seneca Falls Convention. Others oppressed. This whole conversation of equality opened doors for other groups, especially with the whole anti-slavery movement and rights for the African American community. Right is of no sex, truth is of no color. This is a quote by Frederick Douglass. The Declaration of Sentiments. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men and women are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. These are the opening words of this document. 68 women and 32 men signed it. It was modeled after the Declaration of Independence and is known as one of the most, if not the most, important document in women's rights history. 12 of them were passed, but only 11 unanimously. The one that was not agreed upon was the women's right to vote, which is also known as women's suffrage. The list of grievances included losing custody of a child after divorce, and they also wanted to improve education for women. The opposition. To insist on women's suffrage was to flout countless cultural norms and invite public ridicule from the press, politicians, preachers, and especially spouses. These women had to have courage to speak out for their rights and their beliefs on equality, even though that meant facing a lot of ridicule from newspapers and other sources. The 9th resolution did draw the most attention. The result, the 19th Amendment. The right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on the account of sex. This achievement would not have been possible without the bold women who began the women's suffrage movement and met at the Seneca Falls Convention. It was passed by Congress June 4th, 1919. The decades of protest finally resulted in this victory. Sadly, not everyone at the beginning of this movement that contributed to it lived to see this amendment go into effect. The Secretary of State, Bainbridge Colby, certified the ratification on August 26, 1920, changing the face of the American electorate forever. Here's just some of the resources I used. Thank you all for watching.